Good evening and welcome to the Oliveboard platform. My name is Marut Sharma, your logical reasoning expert, and I'm here today to start discussing a very important topic with all of you as far as CGL Tier 2 is concerned, which is critical reasoning. So I've been telling this in a lot of my sessions that critical reasoning and data sufficiency become the gatekeepers for CGL Tier 2. That means for reasoning section. So they are one of the most important topics with a very heavy weightage, and their importance, their impact, their potential is also very high. And these topics, most of you are either, they are taking a lot of time to calculate, to think, or you are just going by the gut. And both of these techniques, both of these approaches are very wrong. You need to develop a critical thinking skill to approach questions from critical reasoning. Now, we have divided these sessions topic wise. First, earlier I had thought that I'll bring 5-6 sessions for you with all mixed questions from all different topics. But due to unavailability of individual questions or even mixed questions at that extent, what we have done is we have divided them into topic wise sessions. So today we'll be focusing on assumptions, conclusions, inferences. Then in a session we'll focus on arguments, then decision making, then cause and effect, assertion, reason, course of action, etc. Right? So we'll cover all the aspects of critical reasoning. And if time permits, I might think about adding an extra session for passage-based critical reasoning as well. Though it is not a part of SSC CGL exams and it has never been asked in the past, but that will just give you a better exposure towards the end. So when I actually terminate the whole session of critical reasoning, I am planning to add one. Let's see where does it take us. Now let's start the session. The very first question in front of you. Before you start, I'll just give you a brief here. These keywords are actually very important. Assumption, conclusion. So what you need to do when you're facing these words, you need to change your thought process. You need to change your state of mind, your approach. And when I'm saying that, what do I imply? What do I mean is that when I'm saying assumptions, a lot of you fail to understand what exactly it means. You associate yourself with the question. You are emotionally attached to the question. Your opinions matter. If the assumption is pertaining to or in line with your assumption, your opinion, you will think that to be correct. Otherwise, no, that's not right. What you think does not matter. What the author think matters. What the author thinks matters. So you have to think from the perspective of the author, not your perspective, not your personal opinion. Detach yourself emotionally from the question. Okay? Whatever the author is saying, he has some thought in his mind, something which is very obvious, so obvious that he need not write that. He thought that his readers are going to understand right away without him writing it down. That means it's a very simple idea. It's not complicated. It's a very basic, very obvious suggestion. And that is always your assumption. Remember, your assumptions are never directly mentioned in your statements. If an assumption is mentioned in the statement, it is not an assumption. So your common criteria of attempting questions where something given in the statement is true, something out of it is false, fails in assumptions. So always remember, in an assumption, it is always going to be implicit, that it is going to be hidden, it is going to be implied, it is never going to be a direct summary of the statement or a restatement in a different language. That is not allowed, that is straight away rejected. Cool. As far as conclusions are concerned, conclusions will also will be of the opposite type here. Conclusions can be of both the types, direct and indirect, that is implicit and explicit. It can be hidden in the statement, not mentioned, or it can be the exact mention, it can be exactly mentioned in the statement, word to word. You can pick up a line from the statement and call it a conclusion, or you can rewrite the whole statement in different words and call it a conclusion. That is a summary of the statement. That's also a valid conclusion. Or you may take this point as the final message where the author wants to drive you by putting across his opinion is known as conclusion. So there is a difference between both the two, and conclusions can always be derived from the statement. It is in both the ways. Assumptions cannot be. So be careful about these keywords. Whenever you get these keywords, you have to have a set path where you're thinking. Otherwise, you will make errors. Okay. Now, the very first question, statement assumption. I want everybody to participate and put the answers in the chat box, because only then are you going to understand that how are you thinking and what is the correct way of thinking about this question. So the statement says, it is good to send a child to school at the age of 3 years. It is good to send a child to school at the age of 3 years. It clearly states, it clearly shows us that the author is probably in the favor of sending a child to school at the age of 3 years. Yeah. The second one says, now the assumptions. Assumption says, at the age of 3 years, the child is not ready to learn. Can I say that? Definitely not. This is absolutely out of the scope of your statement. This is opposing your statement. Assumptions will always be in the favor of the statement because it is being assumed by the author, and the author will actually think of something which is supporting his statement, right? Assumptions are also known as hidden premises, and premises are majorly something which are supportive statements in simple language. So assumptions also 99% will be supportive statements to your primary statement, but just the only difference is assumptions are hidden, they are not mentioned, premises are directly mentioned. Okay, hence we also call assumptions as hidden premises. So if an assumption is going against your statement, straight away reject it. The second one says doing so will improve the child's studies. Now, majority of the students fall into a trap here and they say yes, this is correct. They will think that the author is trying to say that it is good to send a child to school at the age of 3 years because he is thinking that by doing so, it will improve the child's studies. It's a very specific thought, but not a very obvious or a basic. He is not mentioning studies anywhere. He is not saying that it is good for a child to go to school at 3 because he is going to become better at studies. There may be n number of reasons for it. And the author is not being specific about studies anywhere. So you cannot pick up this assumption for the author. Author simply implies that it is good for children to start school at 3 years because probably the author is either experienced it or the author is an expert or the author feels that by doing so it's going to benefit the child overall. This is a very generic assumption which you can make. So what you can do is when you practice these questions, even if you don't understand the assumptions, you try to list your own assumptions. What can be possible assumptions here from the author's side? That will give you a better picture. Next. They're all very interesting questions. Almost all the questions, barring a few, have good traps laid down for you. So don't hesitate from trying, even if you're making errors, don't worry. Yes. India imports uranium from Canada and Russia. India imports uranium from Canada and Russia. What are the assumptions? What is the author? Some basic thing which the author thinks is definitely right but has not mentioned. There are no uranium reserves in India. Is that so? No. The author is just writing that India imports uranium from Russia and Canada. It is not writing that India can only import uranium and it does so from Canada and Russia. Nothing of that sort is mentioned. So author is not trying to assume anything related to absence of uranium altogether. But a lot of people have this false knowledge that India completely lacks uranium and it is totally dependent on other countries for the supply. You have this knowledge already in your head, general knowledge. But you fail to realize that you are going out of the scope of your statement. Your statement is not mentioning anything about that. You go ahead and think that extra thing, you bring it here, you drag that information here and you try to answer this correct one. That's it. Whatever the author has written here, it has to be limited into the scope of that. Your assumption has to be in the scope of that. Of course, it cannot be the same thing. Now, uranium reserve in India have decreased. Now, what trap it is laying for you here? The moment they said no here, this was an extreme statement that it is altogether absent. So now you think that okay, probably they might have decreased. This is very basic. This I can assume. That is why India is importing. Not necessarily. If we are importing something, it need not imply that we are, our resources have depleted or they are falling short. It simply implies whatever demand we have, we are not able to meet that with the current resources amount we have. Probably we always have a less resource set of these. So it's not that they have decreased or depleted now. They are as many as they were yesterday, day before yesterday, 5 years back. But they are not sufficient to be utilized for our country. Hence, we are dependent on imports. Whatever the reason may be, there can be n number of reasons towards it. So can I assume this? Could the author have assumed this? No. So my answer again is option 3. Neither 1 nor 2 is. Okay. Next. This is a very good one. An excellent question this is. Okay. A leading school in Mumbai has increased its fees by 150% from the next academic statement. Assumptions. Now, a lot of people will associate a tone to this statement. Don't have to do that. It's a common tonality trap. Don't associate a tone. Don't associate a tone to this. Okay. So now, what are the assumptions? Due to higher fee, students may change school. Think? Do you think? So what is the author saying? I'll say it to you in a way. Okay, just listen to me. I will associate it. A leading school in Mumbai has increased its fees by 150% from the next academic. My stress is on 150%. Okay. So now I am alarmed. I'm giving you a news that 50%. Right. So I assume that to higher fees, students may change. Very valid assumption. Okay. But on the other hand, if I change the tone, a leading school in Mumbai, leading school, top class, has increased its fees by 150% from the next academic. So it's a leading school. Of course, it's justified. I'm trying to give you that tone now. Now, based on that tone, read the second assumption. Still, there may be equal demand for the school among students. Yeah. So it depends on the tone. We cannot assess the tone. Never associate the tone. But if I see both these assumptions are valid, but never together because they are both contradictory. Okay. Always remember, in terms of assumptions, if you have contradictory assumptions, then your either or option will be correct in case it is mentioned. Otherwise, no. In case either or option is given, then contradictory assumptions will go under either or category. Otherwise, no. So I can say either one is correct or two is correct. Both of them together cannot be true because they are both contradicting each other, right? So what is the author assuming here? I don't know, but it has to be either of these two. Either the author is trying to say that by increment of fees, they are going to drop from the school and they are going to go, or the author is trying to say it's such a high class school that even if they increase the fees by 150%, students are still going to stay there. So my answer is going to be option 4, either assumption 1 or assumption 2 is. This is an excellent question. Why? Because you will never find a question of either or in assumptions anywhere else. So this gives you a good exposure. Okay. Next. Mr. X said to Mr. Y. Mr. X said to Mr. Y, I want to become a doctor because I want to serve humanity. I want to become a doctor because I want to serve humanity. What are the assumptions here? Mr. X is lying to Mr. Y. Can I say that? So now, whenever there is a statement of this sort that somebody said to somebody else, so the assumptions can be from two perspectives. The first assumption will be from the person who is speaker. Okay. Or the second assumption can be from a third party who has written this statement. Either which ways, the assumptions will remain the same. The assumption says Mr. X is lying to Mr. Y. This is a specific assumption. It's a very specific assumption. And I told you assumptions cannot be specific. They are going to be generic always. That Mr. X is lying to Mr. Y. Why will the author assume this? It's not mentioned anywhere. It cannot be taken as a hint from any statement or word. Second one says Mr. Y knows that he is lying. This is a vague thing now. Okay, this is very vague now. Because if this was specific, this has become further additional to that. That is vague. So my answer again is going to be neither of them are. Next. I'll just join. Yeah, sorry for the delay. Okay. So due to potholes in the city, a large number of people are not able to reach the airport on time. Okay, this is a statement. What are the assumptions here? Reaching the airport on time is not necessary. This is vague. This is useless, not related at all. Your assumptions always have to be in line with the statement. They cannot go against your statement. Assumptions, okay? The second one says, there may not be any other route to the airport. Now see, the author is trying to say that there are potholes in the city. Obviously, that does not imply that the whole, each and every road in the city is, is damaged with potholes. If he's saying that there are potholes in the city and reaching the airport is becoming difficult, I think he's safely assuming that there is probably only one route to reach the airport, and that is all derailed or deranged with potholes. But if at all there was another route, then probably even if potholes were there, it would not have affected the reaching time of the airport. Hence, this can be a safe assumption. So I would assume only assumption 2 is the correct answer. Okay. Also a very unique question. I myself find some other answer to be correct here, but from the author's perspective, maybe. It's actually a common place where you might feel that, your assumption, your moral value, your ethical compass is going to tell you something else, but that is not important. The question says here, a government employee tells an applicant after sitting idle. See, so he is mentioning that a government employee is telling an applicant after sitting idle. So the government employee is sitting idle. But what is he telling him? To come after 2 weeks for approval of a certificate because he's very busy and has a lot of work. So the author is trying to add a sarcastic note here. He's trying to imply that even despite sitting idle, he's telling him that I am very busy, I don't have time, please come after. Okay, are you getting the tone of the statement? Now, what are the assumptions here? The assumptions are the government employee wants to help the applicant. Of course not. Definitely not there. The second one says the government employee expects something from the applicant. Technically, I can say that this is also incorrect and my answer is going to be neither of them is implicit. But because of the sarcastic tone which we can read purely because of the contradictory words and sentences used here. At one end, he is saying that he is sitting idle. On the other hand, he is saying that despite that, he is asking him to visit after 2 weeks, then that he is busy right now. And now a good assumption could have been, a very basic or a very direct assumption could have been that he is a very lazy person. He does not want to work right now. He does not feel like working right now probably. And that is why despite being idle, he is asking him to leave right now and not come back. So he might not be morally or ethically as involved into his work as normally we expect. That is a normal assumption. But here it is saying that the government employee expects something from the applicant. Technically, this is an extreme moral allegation. But the author probably is trying to hint at that. By giving you a sarcastic tone, the author probably is trying to hint at that. And that is why the correct answer which is mentioned is option 1. Okay. Correct answer which is option 1 here. I also felt that option 4 should be the correct answer, but it's very normal. That's how critical reasoning works. Next. Now, in the next 2 questions, you are going to learn something new. I'm sure a lot of you don't know this and you make these mistakes commonly. The statement says, Sham tells Ta. Sham tells Ta, the way to reach Shrikant is by air and water routes. The way to reach Shrikant is by air and water routes. Now again, from whose perspective can I think, who's being assuming? Either Sham, because he's speaking, he's telling Geeta. You can think from Sham's perspective, whether he's assumed or not. Or you can think from a third person's perspective who might have written this line, who was listening to both of them. Now, the assumption 1 says Geeta likes to go to Shrikant. This one, I think you will be quick to dismiss this because it's nowhere mentioned in the statement, and this assumption is going out of the scope of the statement. This is assuming something which is somebody's feeling which we are not aware of. We don't know whether Geeta likes to go to Shrikant or she's going with some sort of a purpose that I have to go. I'm being forced to, coaxed to go. This is not right. The second one says Shyam likes to give advice to people. A lot of people, by reading this advice, will think that yes, he does. Probably that is why he is giving her the advice. Okay. Now understand. Whenever you have a question based on advice, notice, etc., anything of this sort, just because somebody has given an advice, never will imply that he or she likes to give. Never. Just because somebody is giving the advice, you cannot assume, because it's you who are assuming that. It's not the person who is saying. Even if Shyam tells Geeta, is he assuming? Can he assume that, I like to give advice? No. Maybe he does not like to give advice, but he's doing it out of desperation, or he's doing it out of, his will to help her in this situation. Or maybe he is also being coaxed to give this advice. So there can be multiple possibilities here. So my answer again will be option 2 here. Neither of them are implicit. Now in here, after understanding this one line, majority of you are going to make an error in this question. Correct answers, everybody, the chat box. Please participate. Okay. It says Y advised X that if he or she wants to study management, he or she should join the IIM. Now this time, Y is advising X. So from whose perspective will you think? Either from Y's perspective or from a third person's perspective, who has seen all this and who's written this line. Now assumptions. IIM provides good management education. Yes, that is why Y is advising X. No, that is a good place you should go. From Y's perspective, if he is saying that you should go and study management in IIM, that means he assumes that IIM provides good management. Right? The next one says X listens to the advice given by Y. Now from the previous case which I told you, you will cross this also. Think that how do I know whether X listens to the advice? And mostly we know that people don't listen to other people's advice. There's a lot of people who are throwing advice here and there. Not everybody is going and listening to them. You yourself might, be in a thought process where you feel that, I don't want to advice from every other person. I don't listen to an advice from everybody. I have my own thought process. I have my own stand. I have my own opinions. I am working according to that. So that personal opinion is forcing you to mark this as incorrect and mark only option 3 as the correct answer. Whereas this completely reverses from the last question. In the last question, when I am telling you that in case of advice, the person who is giving the advice is never going to think that he likes to give the advice. Probably likes, he probably does not like. That is like a prediction, we cannot be sure of that. But if a person is giving advice, supposedly I am talking to you right now. Or I am giving you an advice. What is there going on in my head? Am I assuming that you are going to listen to me? Yes. This is the primary reason why I am talking. If I knew, or if I was assuming that you're not going to pay attention to what I'm saying, and I know deep down that you're not going to listen to me also, you're probably not even there on the screen right now, then why am I wasting my time? I would never do that practically. Right? So that is the reason. If anybody is giving advice, He is always thinking and assuming that the person who I am giving advice to is going to listen to me carefully, is going to pay heed to the advice and is going to take it into consideration. Same goes with a notice, same goes with an appeal, same goes with an advertisement. A person who is designing an advertisement is going to assume that my advertisement will reach the masses. They are going to buy my product because of the advertisement. It's going. Anybody who starts something is going to assume that it is going to be successful. Okay, and we are not specifically thinking about pessimistic people here. So don't go into the details. Okay, here will also be right. Hence, option 4. So I told you, in the next 2 questions, you're going to learn something new. This was what you're going to learn about. Next. This one is easy, I think. You'll be able to figure it out very quickly. After eating food at a wedding reception, many people fell ill and were taken to nearby government and private hospitals. After eating food at a wedding reception, many people fell ill by government and assumptions. The person it can be a journalist who was probably there, or can be a person who saw the complete account and is now narrating. Think from his perspective, from the author's perspective. So he is assuming that the relatives of the affected people may refuse to take them to government hospital. Now, to all of you out there who have learnt critical reasoning, like mathematics, set of rules, I am sure you have come across the rule where it says that definitive words like always, should, must are most correct, and may, might are correct. Thinking that, you will assume that probably this is right. But just by a word, you can decide whether a assumption is true. You have to go through the context. It is clearly mentioning that after eating the food at a wedding reception, many people fell ill. They were taken to nearby government and private hospitals. Okay. By who? By probably their well-wishers only. Now, this is saying the relatives of the affected people may refuse to take them to the government hospital. No, not at all. And the second one says nearby hospitals may be able to attend to the affected people. Yes, they will be. So, it's not about may or might. It's about the context with respect to the. If they are taking them to nearby hospitals, so they are assuming that the nearby hospitals will be able to manage the treatment. Right? So, again, the answer is only is. Last question for statement assumption, then we will shift to statement conclusion. You are appointed as a professor with a probation period of 1 year, and your work will be reviewed at the end of the period for confirmation. The line in the appointment letter. Think from the perspective of the person who has written this line in the appointment letter. You are appointed as a professor with a probation period of 1 year. Your work will be reviewed at the end of the period of confirmation. First one says, while appointing, the quality of a person's work is not known. Yes, it is not known. Of course, it's not known. That is why the person is writing this line. He's thinking that I don't know the quality of the work of the person. Now you will say there is a CV and there is experience. Yeah, so I know a bunch of his history, but I don't know how he's going to perform in the company. I don't know what is his quality of work unless I see it for myself. So hence I am giving him a probation period that we'll observe you in this period for confirming you for the job. Okay. Second one says, normally a person tries to prove his competence during the probation period. Hence he is giving him the probation period that I'm giving you, I'm allotting this probation period, assuming that you're going to display your best in this time so that we can assess you later on and then probably give you a confirm or no confirm, depends. So I think both here will be okay. Cool. Now we'll switch to the next set of questions, which is statement all the more. There are some more questions I'll be sharing with you. After the session ends, I'll share the whole PDF. Find some extra questions of assumption, probably conclusion, with the answer keys provided in the end. You can go through these questions, practice them at your end, right? Statement conclusion. I've already discussed with you what conclusions are. So you now start thinking those lines. Now, by conclusion, I'll repeat again. It implies that what is the author trying to tell you at the end? What does the author imply? What is the main agenda of the author? That is what the conclusion is. And it can also be a summary of the statement. It can be word to word statement being written in a different language. Also agreed. And okay. Now, the statement says some people believe that God is in the temple. Some people believe that God is in the temple. Say God can be found only in the temple? No. I don't understand the author. So I'm not what message I'm trying to give. It is not what is mentioned here. God is everywhere. I don't. The two contradictory. Could have been right if we had an option of either here, but it's not here. So again, we'll select none of them follows. Just correct. What happened is I had mentioned pressure. So pressure, some probably took it as blood pressure and translated accordingly. You have to read it as pressure. Solve the question. The last 10 years, chapters have been reduced to lessen pressure on. The other one is one way to reduce despair or depression. Now the author is mentioned. Both of them are correct. They are supporting each other. They can be used devices for. These are the thoughts of the author. What is the author actually trying to tell you? The first conclusion says nowadays students are happy and not serious about studies. No, not at all. Second one says a vast syllabus burden, the main cause of high pressure among school students. Yes, the author is indirectly trying to say that to you because he's trying to mention in the last 10 years chapters have been reduced to lessen the pressure, and one way to reduce despair or depression is to reduce syllabus. So he's trying to emphasize that syllabus is the primary reason of depression, despair and pressure. Follows option B. Implicit though. Not directly mentioned, it's just picked up from what is being. Next. Last year, India had 4,84,874 total accidents, 1,48,707 traffic deaths. Conclusions are some traffic accidents were fatal. Yes, absolutely. And the second one says poor road conditions were also responsible for such high numbers. I don't know. The author has not spoken about the poor, and neither is he trying to hint towards that, because we cannot read that here. Conclusions can never be assumption. You have to have their base somewhere or the other in the statement, even if they are hidden. One follows here. Option A. Only science students are permitted to attend the science. Says all students present are science students. Of course, just a restatement. Whatever is written statement is just represented into a language. And students without science as a subject are not permitted. Again, same thing only. Okay, so both follow option D. Clear cut answer. Now, some people here they will argue. How? Why? Maybe by mistake there are some commerce students also, or maybe there are some students who are science, commerce both. Yeah, fine. You're overthinking. You don't have to go. It is only saying it is only science students are permitted. That means all students who are present there are only science students. What is being mentioned? One is easy. Some questions are very easy, direct. Many people from villages move to cities for a better future. Conclusions: government officials should mandatorily posted in villages. Nothing to got has got nothing to do with the statement. And increase transport facilities between cities and villages. They are not suffering from a transport issue. Everybody is going to the city. So if you increase the transport system, they are going to migrate at a faster speed. That's not what they are talking about. So neither one nor two following. Yeah, I told you already. Able to figure it out in note. This is also easy. recession, company X laid off 300 employees. Statement. Conclusions are company X is not firing people. All competitors of X are also affected. Draw this conclusion. No. Only company X is affected, not as much as the others. Again, neither follows will be the correct answer. These ones are easy. This is also easy though, but you might just go off track here for this one question. Probably. Simla is less polluted than New Delhi. Okay, fine. Just an info. Now, conclusion says a less polluted city is a better place to live. Something which you're going to assume. Assume means you know this. Very obvious. Everybody knows that if a place is less polluted, better place to live overall. Beneficial in a lot of ways. But is it being mentioned in statement? Is it being that in your second one says among Mumbai, Simla, and New Delhi, Simla is the least polluted. I don't know because by bringing Mumbai, they have kicked it out of the scope of your state. So my answer here is going to be answer follows. Though a lot of you will end up answering only one follows. That is where I'm going to take you for a ride. Sorry. Next. Goiter, there is an insufficiency of iodine content in the body. Goiter, there is an insufficiency of iodine content in the body. Adequate iodine intake is necessary to control goiter. Of course, the type of salt should be checked before consumption. A lot of you will now associate this as yes, we know whether it's an iodized salt or not, because that was the primary crisis. India is not a country with a lot of seafood, that too in those days. A lot of Indian population was suffering from iodine. Okay. That is why what the government forced the salt to be iodized. Started adding potassium iodide to salt. Okay. They were not reacting with each other, and iodine was increased or was present in salt now. Salt, you are also getting the RDA of iodine. Despite not having seafood, a lot of areas in the country, people started, so the goiter started coming. Very old story for our country. And that is how you will relate, and you will say that, okay, probably we need to check the type of salt, not be non-iodized. No, got nothing salt here. Nothing is being mentioned here. Do not assume, do not add anything extra. Only one is following. When old things end, when old things end, things take their place. What is the author trying to? Old things end, things there. Change is the law of nature. Yes, this is just restatement in a different language. Second one says discard old ideas. See, is saying when old things end, that is when new things are taking. When the old things are coming towards their end, new things are replacing. Here it is saying discard old ideas. No, the author is not trying to. But neither the final message is okay. Or maybe the ideas, the old ideas have not yet ended, and clearly mentioning only after ending the new. This is rubbish. So one follows. The last question for the session and for statement. Okay. Here. The manager humiliated Sachin in the presence of colleagues. Conclusions: the manager did not like Sachin, not necessarily. Not Sachin was not popular among his again, not answer is going to be option. May have humiliated, probably lost his temper, not control. Maybe Sachin he was popular among his peers, and that is why this may don't know. Right? With that, we are done with critical reasoning. Okay. The first session, assumption, inference. Inference is somewhat similar to conclusion. Similar questions come up, just that they will mention in your thought process slightly change. You are not looking at the terminal statement or the final statement of your author. You are also concerned about multiple little statement or meaning from the single sentence. That is inference. Now we look at probably arguments in the next session. Okay. Then I'll also be planning sessions on course of action, cause and effect, argument, assertion, reason. Everything will be covered session wise. Practice some good amount of questions. For now, this is the end. Thank you so much for joining live, guys, and I'll see you around in the next one. Till then, bye bye. Namaskar. Hello.